Okay, it's day 446 off the grid. And this is Postkvnt II, in fact, we could say. And this is basically inspired by the lovely Baffy, because I've been getting all these packages arriving in the mail and she says, you just don't open them. Yes, I just don't open them until it's time to actually do something with them, because I know what they are. It's really not that exciting anymore when I buy these things. I know what they are, but let's get on with it and see what they are anyway. Okay, and this is the first one. Start with the little one. Like you do with fireworks, start with the little one. Oh, what have we got here? Oh, there we go. It's a red LED voltmeter from Ching Chong, China. Yes, just put that chair out of the way. I don't normally do my videos like this, fixed camera like this, because I'm not trying to win any YouTube awards or make any massive channel. I just like to document the stuff I do. And I'm sure anyone who's interested in solar has seen these before. I've got plenty of them. This is the bezel mounting type. They were really cheap off New Frogs, and I always need a voltmeter, so thought I'd take the opportunity to buy a couple. So all good, eh? Now I've got two. I do have an immediate use for at least one of them. I'm going to change one of those voltmeters in the 24 volt shed on the split balanced system there, because the red one I've got in there is actually really inaccurate. I've actually found these kind of voltmeters actually pretty good. So I'm going to swap the red one. It'd be nice to actually have a green bezel mounting one too. Actually, I might pinch the one off the F-bank for that. Mount them all up nice and neatly. Good idea, Zam, good idea. So that's that. Right, next. Actually, this is the one that arrived the most recently. Came from a guy trading in Zanganui, and it arrived the very next day after the ordering, so I was pretty impressed. And this is actually a pretty important device. And this is one that I should have actually dived on into and had a look, because it's kind of something I'm really quite intrigued about. This is my first ever complete electronic module, ordered from, well, it wasn't from directly from China, but I'm sure that's where it originated. And there we go, a module. Yes, that's right, I've never had one of these before. Every time I've ever kind of wanted something that one of these might provide, I've just kind of ended up building my own budget version, you know. Now, there's a lot to be said about building your own bits and pieces like this, because, you know, who knows if you're always going to be able to buy these cheap from China. You know, who knows what's going to happen in the future. But hey, as long as there's old electronic junk lying around with power transistors and whatnot in it, then simple circuits you design yourself, you can always rebuild as and when necessary. But oftentimes it's a lot more elegant to use a commercial unit. It just does the job quickly without too much pissing about. So, and that's what I want for this. Okay, well, okay, my reasons for having it. So what actually is it? Well, it's a boost converter. It's apparently rated at 600 watts. So you got your input over there and your output, and it'll boost from as low as 6 volts, I believe, and you can get an output up to 80 volts. And of course, the reason why the wattage is important in these kind of things is because obviously, if you're trying to boost from a really low voltage up to a really high one, the amount of amps you'll be able to draw off the thing will, you know, decline substantially, because it's the total wattage that it can handle. It's got a really nice heatsink. There's the MOSFETs on the back there, but yeah. It's not really so important what this is, because I'm not a salesman. I'm not trying to sell these to you. What I'm going to tell you is what I'm going to do with it. And what I'm actually going to do with this is use it as a DC to DC battery charger, a boost charger from my boost battery bank, my backup battery bank in the A shed. So the idea is I feed in the input from the batteries of the backup bank, and then these output will go through probably a connector, possibly a fuse, and maybe something else, maybe even an ammeter. It'll go through to the connector that I can plug into my various battery banks that might need boosting at that time. And what I'll simply do, this is the this is the sort of the armchair premise, is I'll set the voltage outputs to about 13.8 volts, and I'll adjust the current so that I'm pushing out no more than, say, about 5 amps. I don't want it to suck through the juice from the backup batteries too quickly. And I'll talk more about this system once I actually hook it up. It'll be more interesting, I'm sure. But this is the fundamental part of what I'm going to use. A couple of issues I've got to find out. Does it have a common negative rail? Because if it doesn't, things could get tricky. So, but still doable. Let's just hope it's got a common negative rail. In fact, you know. Oh look, my little analog multimeter sitting right here. So, in fact, we can find out right now. Why not? Live on camera. Live on camera. We see that. Continuity test. Okay. A negative. Out negative. Oh yay, look at that. A total. Okay, let's try the positive just to. Oh, there's more resistance there. But of course, in a boost converter, same resistance both ways. In a boost converter, why don't I zero this meter and do a better test there. Okay, there we go. Okay, still see that? No, my hand's blocking it. Let's try and get around this way. Yep, that's totally 0 ohms. And then a slight, well, that's actually a lot more than 0 ohms. That's actually 500 ohms there. So it's definitely a common negative. Yay, I'm really happy about that. But yeah, also in a boost converter there's usually a path between the output and the input. So that's something I have to address. I'll probably bung a diode on the output because I don't want the current to backfeed. But anyway, that's enough of that. There's my boost converter. Fuse. Don't know what that fuse is rated. It looks pretty meaty. Must be 10 amps or so. There we go. Boost converter. A nice heat sink. It's got to figure out a neat way to mount it up now. So that's cool. It's a great thing for Postkvnt, isn't it? Right. Next. This came quite a while ago actually. I mean, I've just been so busy, I just didn't really want to open it until now. Oh, what's that? Fish and chips in there. Fish and chips. Looks like a fish and chip packet. Let's hope it's not. Right. Oh, what's this? What do we have here? We've got a comprehensive instruction booklet, which I will study off camera. Oh, look at that, eh? It's a Voltronic MPPT charge controller. And this is very significant for me because this is my first ever MPPT charge controller I've ever bought. Ever. I do not have any MPPT on my system at all. Until now, when I hook this up. I got a really good deal on this. Now, there's a couple of reasons why I bought it. For one thing, I have made quite a few videos where I have kind of, in a way, rubbished MPPT as being kind of irrelevant to my setup and possibly, in the grand scheme of things, irrelevant to solar. And that might have even sort of borderline offended some people. Oh no, MPPT is great, you know, and stuff. And it's not a really strong position to have opinions like that from when you haven't even messed around with something. So I wanted to mess around with it to satisfy myself whether it is useful or whether it's not. But secondly, I do actually have an immediate use for it that I know it will be useful, and I know it will be a benefit and be an advantage to have MPPT, and that is I have some funny folding solar panels that I've adapted to be permanent mounting panels up on the house. And they have an odd number of cells in them. Instead of being a 36 cell panel for a nominal 12 volt panel, you know, 18 volt kind of output at maximum power point, they have what is it, 48 cells. Yeah, 48 cells, so it's like each folding part of the panel has 24 cells on it, and they're all in series, so 48 cells, which gives you an open circuit voltage of nearly 30 volts, 27 volts, something like that, I think it was. And of course the maximum power point is well over the normal voltage of a normal nominal 12 volt panel, so it means into a 12 volt circuit you're losing a lot of power from those panels, because connecting them into a 12 volt battery will just draw their voltage down. That's where, of course, the MPPT comes in. So in other words, what I'm using the MPPT for is to make these, to unlock, I guess, some of the power from these panels that I can't normally get in any other way. So the only way I could figure out to do it was some kind of buck converter, and I might have just bought a buck converter, but now I've bought a whole charge controller. The tricky thing will be exactly how I integrate it into my system, because I don't necessarily want this to perform the full-blown charge controlling functions that it's capable of. I just really want it to be a buck converter to, you know, allow these panels to work at their maximum potential. But we'll see. We'll see. That's another wee project. So how's that, eh? Right. And last but not least, this is actually strictly not Postkwnt. It actually, because I went into a bricks and mortar store and actually bought this. I bought it from the awesome J-Car Palmerston North. And like a lot of shops, I like to go in there and hunt out all the sort of reduced to clear items. And, well, what goodies did I get? Amongst other things that day, but these are the only things we're going to show today. I've got two of these. Shock horror. Zan's got DC breakers. Yes, they're DC breakers. They're brand new, shrink wrapped People brand, which I have actually heard a few nasty things about, but I've got plenty of their AC breakers and they work just fine on DC. So I'm sure the DC ones will work even better. But they're DC breakers. But I think most importantly is that they're double pole breakers, which is really quite kind of useful for some applications I have in mind. For a start, of course. Although I do use AC breakers on DC circuits, I never use them on DC circuits above 24 volts. That would be a no-no. Whereas these have a rating of, well, what is it? Well, actually, funnily enough, they actually still have an AC rating of 415 volts, yet their DC rating is actually 440. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? So, yeah, high voltage circuits, and I do have one particular high voltage circuit that's been crying out for a breaker switch on it, so there we go. And I may end up using one in conjunction with this, because although I have a fair amount of confidence in the use of my AC breakers on 12 volt and 24 volt circuits, I can say that from a point of where none of those breakers are actually installed inside the house. So if any of them did ever catch fire, the worst they could burn down is a shitty old shed, possibly full of solar equipment, but a shed and not a house. So if I ever need to install a breaker inside the house on any DC circuits, I will use a DC breaker, and now I have one. So there. Some pretty cool stuff, eh? We've got the DC breakers, we've got the Voltronic MPPT, we've got the 600 watt boost converter, and last, but probably least, but you know, still kind of cool. I've kind of lost them now. Oh, there they are. We've got the not one, but two LED voltmeters, good for about 30 volts. So there we go. That's Postkvnt II. On day 446 off the grid.